Morning, friends. Today we're going to be reading the BFG, the chapter called The Great Plan. And look at this. Look, we're halfway through the book. Cool, right? Well, the last chapter, Sophie was reading through the dreams, and she was reading many wonderful, happy dreams. And then all of the giants went trotting off to go eat people, little human beings. And a bunch of them were going to go eat children. That's not very nice, is it? So Sophie, I think she's probably not going to be too happy about that. Let's find out. The Great Plan. "We've absolutely got to stop them," Sophie cried. "Put me back in your pocket quick, and we'll chase after them and warn everyone in England they're coming." "Redunculous and impossible," the BFG said. "They is going 2 times as fast as me, and they is finishing their guzzle before we is halfway." "But we can't just sit here and do nothing," Sophie cried. "How many girls and boys are they going to eat tonight?" "Many," the BFG said. "The flesh lump eating giant alone has a most squawkling, whoopsie appetite." "Will he snatch them out of their beds while they're sleeping?" "Like peas out of a poodle," the BFG said. "I can't bear to think of it," Sophie cried. "Then don't," the BFG said. "For years and years I is sitting here on this very rock, every night after night when they is galloping away, and I is feeling so sad for all the human beings they is going to gobble up, but I has had to get used to it. There is nothing I can do. If I wasn't a teachy little runty giant, only 24 feet high, then I would be stopping them. But that is absolutely out of the window." "Do you always know where they're going?" Sophie asked. "Always," the BFG said. "Every night they is yelling at me as they go boodling past. The other day they was yelling, 'We is off to Mississippi and Missouri to guzzle them both.'" "Disgusting," Sophie said. "I hate them." She and the big friendly giant sat quietly side by side on the blue rock in the gathering dusk. Sophie had never felt so helpless in all her life. After a while, she stood up and cried out, "I just can't stand it. Just think of the poor girls and boys who are going to be eaten alive in a few hours' time. We can't just sit here and do nothing. We've got to go after those brutes." "No," the BFG said. "We must," Sophie cried. "Why won't you go?" The BFG sighed and shook his head firmly. "I has told you 5 or 6 times," he said, "and the 3rd will be the last. I is never showing myself to human beings." Did you catch that? He said, "I has told you 5 or 6 times, and the 3rd will be the last." "Why ever not?" "If I do, they will be putting me in the zoo with all the giraffes and the catty piddlers." "Nonsense," Sophie said. "And they will be sending you straight back to a human orphanage," the BFG went on. "Grown-up human beings is not famous for their kindness." "They is squiffle rotters and grink skludgers." "That simply isn't true," Sophie cried angrily. "Some of them are very kind indeed." "Who?" said the BFG. "Name one." "The Queen of England," Sophie said. "You can't call her a squiffle rotter or a grink sludger." "Well," the BFG said. "You can't call her a squick peep or a not mucher either," Sophie said, getting angrier and angrier. "The flesh lump eater is longing dearly to guzzle her up," the BFG said, smiling a little now. "Who? The Queen?" Sophie cried aghast. "Yes," the BFG answered. "The flesh lump eater says he is never eating Queen, and he thinks perhaps she has an especially scrumdiddlyumptious flavor." "How dare he?" Sophie cried. "But flesh lump eater says there's too many soldiers around her palace and he dursn't try it." "He'd better not," Sophie said. "He's also saying he would very much like to guzzle one of the soldiers in his pretty red suit, but he is worried about those big black furry hats they is wearing. He thinks they might be sticking in his throat. I hope he chokes, Sophie said. Flesh Lump Eater is a very careful giant, the BFG said. Sophie was silent for a few moments. Then suddenly, in a voice filled with excitement, she cried out, I've got it! By golly, I think I've got it. Got what? Asked the BFG. The answer, cried Sophie. We'll go to the Queen. It's a terrific idea. If I went and told the Queen about those disgusting man-eating giants, I'm sure she'd do something about it. The BFG looked down at her sadly and shook his head. She's not believing you, he said. Never in a month of Mondays. I think she would. She would not. Of course she would. The BFG. I has told you before that simply human beings is simply not believing in giants. Then it's us to find a way to make her believe in them, Sophie said. And how is you getting to see the Queen anyway? The BFG asked. Now, hold on a sec. Sophie said, just you hold on a sec, because I've got another idea. Your idea is full of crodswoggle, the BFG said. Not this one, Sophie said. You say that if we tell the Queen, she would never believe us. I is certain she wouldn't, the BFG said. But we aren't going to tell her, Sophie said excitedly. We don't have to tell her. We will make her dream it. That is an even more frostbuggling suggestion, the BFG said. Dreams is a lot of fun, but nobody is believing in the dreams either. You is only believing in a dream while you is actually dreaming it. But as soon as you is waking up, you is saying, oh, thank goodness, it's only a dream. Don't you worry about that part of it, Sophie said. I can fix that. Never can you fix it, the BFG said. I can. I swear I can. But first of all, let me ask you a very important question. Can you make a person dream absolutely anything in the world? Anything you like, the BFG said proudly. If I said I wanted to dream that I was a flying bathtub with silver wings, could you make me dream it? I could, the BFG said. But how? Sophie said. You obviously don't have exactly that dream in your collection. I do not, the BFG said, but I could soon be mixing it up. How could you mix it up? It's a little bit like mixing a cake, the BFG said. If you is putting the right amounts of all the different things into it, you is making the cake come out any way you want. Sugary, splongy, curranty, Christmassy, or gobswitchy. It's the same with dreams. Go on, Sophie said. I has dillions of dreams on my shelves, right or left? Right, Sophie said. I has dreams about bathtubs, lots of them. I has dreams about silver wings, and I has dreams about flying, so all I have to do is mix those dreams together in the proper way, and I is very quickly making a dream where you is flying in a bathtub with silver wings. I see what you mean, Sophie said, but I didn't know you could mix one dream with another. Dreams like being mixed, the BFG answered. They is getting very lonesome all by themselves in those glassy bottles. Right, Sophie said. Now then, do you have dreams about the Queen of England? Lots of them, the BFG said. And about giants? Of course, the BFG said. And about giants eating people? Swiggles of them, the BFG said. And about little girls like me? Those is the commonest of all, the BFG said. I has bottles and bottles of dreams about little girls. And so you could mix them all just as I want you to, Sophie asked, getting more and more excited. Of course, BFG said. But how is this helping us? I think you is barking up the wrong dog. Now hold on, Sophie said. Listen carefully. I want you to mix a dream which you will blow into the Queen of England's bedroom when she is asleep. And this is how it will go. Now hang on a mintick, the BFG said. How is I possibly going to get near enough to the Queen of England's bedroom to blow in my dream? You is talking dumb silly. I'll tell you that later, Sophie said. For the moment, please listen carefully. Here is the dream I want you to mix. Are you paying attention? Very close, the BFG said. I want the queen to dream that 9 disgusting giants, each one about 50 feet tall, are galloping off to England in the night. She must dream their names as well. What are their names again? Flesh Lump Eater, the BFG said. Man Hugger, Bone Cruncher, Child Chewer, Meat Dripper, Gizzard Gulper, Maid Smasher, Blood Bottler, and the Butcher Boy. Let her dream all those names, Sophie said, and let her dream that they will be creeping into England in the depths of the witching hour and snatching little boys and girls from their beds. Let her dream that they will be reaching into the bedroom windows and pulling the little boys and girls out of their beds, and then... Sophie paused. Do they eat them on the spot, or do they carry them away first? They is usually just popping them straight into their mouth like popcorn, the BFG said. Put that in the dream, Sophie said, and then the dream must say that when their tummies are full, they will go galloping back to Giant Country where no one can find them. Is that all? Certainly not, Sophie said. You must then explain to the queen that her dream there is a big friendly giant who can tell her where all those beasts are living, so that she can send her soldiers and her armies to capture them once and for all. And now let her dream one last and very important thing. Let her dream that there is a little girl called Sophie sitting on her windowsill who will tell her where the big friendly giant is hiding. Where he is hiding? Asked the BFG. We'll come to that later, Sophie said. So the queen dreams her dream, right? Right, the BFG said. Then she wakes up and the first thing she thinks is, oh, what a horrid dream. I'm so glad it was only a dream. And then she looks up from her pillow and what does she see? What does she see? The BFG asked. She sees a little girl called Sophie sitting on her windowsill, right there in real life before her eyes. How is you going to be sitting on the queen's windowsill, may I beg? You are going to put me there, Sophie said. And that's the lovely part about it. If someone dreams that there's a little girl sitting on their windowsill and then she wakes up and sees the little girl is really sitting there, is it a dream come true or is it not? I is beginning to see where you is driving to, the BFG said. If the queen is knowing that part of her dream is true, then perhaps she is believing the rest of it is true as well. That's about it, Sophie said, but I shall have to convince her of that myself. You said you was wanting the dream to say there is a big friendly giant who is also going to talk to the queen? Absolutely, Sophie said. You must. You're the only one who can tell her where to find the other giants. How is I meeting the queen? Asked the BFG. I is not wanting to be shooted by her soldiers. The soldiers are only in front of the palace. At the back, there's a huge garden, and there are no soldiers in there at all. There's a very high wall with spikes on it around the garden to stop people from climbing in. But you could simply walk over that. How is you knowing all this about the Queen's palace? The BFG asked. Last year I was in a different orphanage. It was in London, and we used to go for walks around there. Is you helping me to find this palace? The BFG asked. I has never dared to go hide and sneaking around London in my life. I'll show you the way, Sophie said confidently. I is frightened of London, the BFG said. Don't be, Sophie said. It's full of tiny dark streets, and there are very few people about in the witching hour. The BFG picked Sophie up between one finger and a thumb and placed her gently on the palm of the other hand. Is the Queen's palace very big? He asked. Huge, Sophie said. Then how is we finding the right bedroom? That's up to you, Sophie said. You're supposed to be an expert at that sort of thing. And you is absolutely sure the Queen will not put me in a zoo with all the other caterpillars? Of course she won't, Sophie said. You'll be a hero. And you'll never have to eat schnozcumbers again. Sophie saw the BFG's eyes widen. He licked his lips. You mean it? He said. You really mean it? No more disgustive schnozcumbers? You couldn't get one if you wanted to, Sophie said. Humans don't grow them. That did it. The BFG got to his feet. When you is wanting me to mix this special dream? He asked. Now, Sophie said. As soon as you've mixed the dream. When is we going to see the Queen? Tonight, Sophie said, as soon as you mix the dream. Tonight? The BFG cried. Why such a flush-bunking flurry? If we can't save tonight's children, we can anyway save tomorrow's, Sophie said. What is more, I'm getting famished. I haven't had to eat, a thing to eat for 24 hours. Then we had better get crackling, the BFG said, moving back towards the cave. Sophie kissed him on the tip of his thumb. I knew you'd do it, she said. Come on, let's hurry. The next chapter is called Mixing the Dream. Have a wonderful day.